Welcome to Litbit channel. Today we will see the poem Mirror by Sylvia Plath. Sylvia Plath was an American poet, novelist and writer. She was born on October 27, 1932 in Boston, Massachusetts. Father name is Otto Plath, was a German immigrant and biology professor, and her mother Aurelia Schober Plath was a student of Otto's, who later taught German and English. Then she had a brother Warren, born in 1935. About her education, attended Smith College in 1952-1955 on a scholarship. Then studied creative writing and literature and published her first poem in the Smith Review 1950. About her career, she won a Fulbright scholarship to study at Newham College, Cambridge in 1956 to 57 and met a married British poet Ted Hughes in 1956. She published her first collection of poems, The Colossus and Other Poems, in 1960, and she wrote her semi-autobiographical novel, The Bell Jar, in 1963. Her struggles and death. She suffered from depressions and mental illness throughout her life. Then she suffered from depressions and mental illness throughout her life. Then she had a tumultuous relationship with Ted Hughes, who left her for another woman. Then she died on February 11, 1963 at the age of 30. Then she posthumously published collections of poetry including Ariel 1965 and Crossing the Water in 1971. The Bell Jar became a classic of American literature. After that, her intense and emotionally raw writing styles exploring themes of mental illness, identity and morality. Her writing based on confectional poetry movement and modernist and surrealist movement and feminist literature. She got a Pulitzer Prize for Poetry in 1982 for the collection of poems, National Book Award nomination for The Bell Jar 1963. Overall, Sylvia Plath's life was remarked by both creative brilliance and personal turmoil, leaving behind a lasting legacy in American literature. Let's see the background of the poem. In this poem written in 1960 during Plath's times at Yoddo, an artist colony in New York. Then it should be part of Plath's first collection, The Closes and Other Poems in 1960. It should be reflects Plath's struggles with identity and self-perception, aging and mortality. In this poem delivered the mental illness of Plath and marriage and relationship and societal expectation and objectifications of women. She was influenced by confectional poetry movement like intimate, personal and emotional, and she delivered the imagery and symbolism from nature and forgotten psychoanalysis, explorations of the subconscious. Plath's personal experience and emotions are deeply embedded in the poem, making it a powerful and relatable work. Keep in mind that Plath's work is highly personal and open to interpretations, so this background provides a general context for understanding the poem. Next one, setting of the poem. In this poem, a room with a mirror, likely a bedroom or dressing room, a private and intimate space where the speakers observes the women, a place where the woman comes to contemplate her identity and appearance, a space that represents self-reflections, introspection and personal truth. The setting is not explicitly described, but it can be interfered from the context of the poem. The mirror's voice and perspective creates a sense of closeness and immediacy and drawing the readers into the women's private world. Some possible interpretations of the setting include the mirror as a symbol of women's inner world or subconsciousness, the room as the representations of the women's emotional and psychological state, the mirror as a threshold between the women's public and private selves. The setting is intentionally vague, allowing the reader to focus on the mirror observations and the women's emotion rather than a specific physical location. Event of the poem. In this poem written in 1960 during the Cold War era and the rise of consumer culture, It's a part of a confectional poetry movement which emphasized personal and emotional experience. It reflects the societal pressures and expectation placed on women during the 1950s and 1960s. It should be published in Plath's first collection, The Colossus and Other Poems, in 1960, with received a critical acclaim. This one written during the Plath's times at Yado, an artist colony in New York, where she was surrounded by other writers and artists. It should be influenced by Plath's own struggles with mental illness, identity, and marriage. It's a part of the larger literary movements of the 1960s which emphasized experimentation, creativity, and pushing boundaries. Some other key historical events and cultural trends are the races of feminism and the women liberation movement, the civil rights movement and the fight for social justice, then the Cold War and the threat of nuclear war, then the growth of consumer culture and the rise of mass media. And the emergence of a new literary movement such as confectional poetry and beat poetry, understanding the historical context of the poem can provide insight into the themes, imagery, and emotion that Plath explores in Mirror. Let's we see the rhyme scheme of the poem. There is no consistency rhyme scheme throughout the poem. Occasionally internal rhymes and assonance. Then free verse style with the focus on natural speech rhyme and enjoyment. Rhymes are exact and reflect line number 1 and 3, and wall and all, it's line number 7 and 9, and face and replace line number 15 and 20, and heart and part is line 9 and 21. Uses of free verse and internal rhymes creates a sense of fluidity and natural speech which suit the mirror conversational tone and the poem themes of identity and self-reflection. In the poem delivers many poetic devices like imagery, symbolism, metaphor, and personification, enjambment, assonance, alteration, irony, simile, stream of consciousness, and repetition and juxtaposition. This poetic device help creates a rich, complex, and thought-provoking poems that explores themes of identity, self-perception, and the human condition. The poem explores the themes, the tension between the self and the external world as reflected in the mirror. Self-perspection, the mirror honestly highlights the woman's disordered self-image and her attempts to escape reality. Aging and mortality, the poem confronts the inevitability of age and death symbolized by the terrible fish rising to the surface. Objectification, the mirror gaze objectifies the women, emphasizes societal pressure to conform to beauty standards. Critical perspectiveness, in feminist critique, the poem highlights the societal pressures on women to conform to beauty standards and the objectifications of the female body. Next one, in psychoanalytic critique, the mirror can be seen as a symbol of the superego, highlighting the women internalized self-criticism and the struggles of self-acceptance. Analyst critic, the poem confronts the individual with the reality of their own mortality and the impermanence of self. Strength of the poem is honesty and clarity. In this topic, Plath's poetry is known for its unflinching honesty, and Mirror is no exception. Next one, imagery and symbolism. The poem vivid imagery and powerful symbolism create a lasting impact on the reader. In universal theme, the poem explorations of identity, self-perception and mortality make it relatable and timeless. The poem is a limited perspective. The poem focus on the individual inner world may limit its scope and perspective. In intensity and darkness, Plath's poetry can be intense and unflinching, which may be challenging for some readers. Mirror is a powerful and throughout provoking poems that explores fundamental human concern. It is uses of imagery, symbolism and personification creates a rich and complex work that rewards close reading and reflection. In author point of view, it's a third person perspective. The poem is written from the mirror point of view, creating a sense of detachment and objectivity. In Observe's voice, the mirror observes the human actions and thoughts, provoking a neutral, non judgmental perspective. The mirror voice is reflective, echoing the woman's thoughts and emotions and offering a deeper understanding of her inner world. Then the mirror perspective is honest and unflinching, revealing the woman's insecurities and fears. Then, despite its honesty, the mirror voice is empathetic and compassionate, conveying a sense of understanding and connection. The mirror perspective, the poem examines universal themes like identity, self-expression, and mortality. Then, by using a non-human perspective, plots challenge traditional narratives and offers a fresh and unique voice. The mirror voice creates a sense of intimacy and immediacy, drawing the reader into the woman's inner world. Then the poem shows how self-perception can be distorted and how we often struggles to confront our true selves. Overall, the mirror perspective in the poem offers a unique and powerful explorations of the human experience. The poem begins with the mirror introductions, describing itself as silver and exact in line 1, emphasizing its accuracy and truthfulness. It claims to have no perceptions, swallowing whatever I see in line number 3 without bias and distraction. The mirror describes its observations of the woman who has been its owner for many years. It notes that she searches for her true self in the reflection but often distorts her own image through makeup, candles, and other means in this line 5 to 8. The mirror reflects on its own role, stating that it is not cruel, only truthful in line number 9, highlighting its honesty and objectivity. It describes the woman's aging process from the young girl to an old woman and how she tries to escape this reality in line number 11 to 14. Mirror emphasizes its own consistency and reliability, stating that it remains unchanging despite the woman's attempts to alter her appearance in line number 15 to 16. It notes that the woman's face is a lake in line number 17. It's symbolizing the depth of her inner self. I explore the woman's mortality with the mirror, stating that it has been her drawn her youthful self and rise again as an old woman, line number 19 to 20. The mirror concludes by emphasizing its own truthfulness, stating that it reflects the woman's true self even if she tries to escape it. Throughout the poem, Plath uses the mirror as a symbol of truth, honesty, and self-reflection, exploring the theme of identity, aging, mortality, and the human condition. The mirror voice is detached yet empathetic, offering a powerful and moving portrayal of the women's inner world. Thank you viewers. Thanks for watching this video.